every record for me is a puzzle. So it doesn't matter if it's One Direction or Ringo or Carole King or whoever. I'm gonna approach it with the utmost respect for their artistry and do anything I can to just enhance it and just maybe bring my voice to it. Hey, my name is Sam Hollander. I'm a songwriter, I'm a producer, and I am with Sound Exchange. Thank you very much.
So I want to take you back to a moment and want to learn a little bit more about it. You grew up in New York.
I did.
And your mom came into Manhattan one night and she had dinner with Nile Rodgers.
My mom was at a dinner party and it was at Andy Warhol's apartment, and Nile Rodgers was there. And my mom knew that I collected vinyl like a crack fiend. And I had crates and crates of $1 records, and I had tons of Chic records. I had his David Bowie Let's Dance record. I had his Duran Duran stuff. I was a massive Nile Rodgers fan. So she knew the name because I talked about him a lot. And she ended up sitting down next to him, and she was exasperated because I was the bottom of my class academically and couldn't sit still in classrooms. And my parents were both Ivy League educated, and, they didn't understand where the failings were. And, she was trying to explain this child to Nile, and Nile said, well, maybe, he might be, is he musical? She said, all he cares about is music and he just studies your stuff. So he might be a songwriter or a producer. And my mom told me that over breakfast the next morning, and I marched into the last days of 8th grade and told my entire school that I'd be a big songwriter, having never written a song. It's quite a skill.
How did that shape your validation earlier on, especially in a career path that doesn't have like a clear, map out?
I think I was the poster child of fake it till you make it. I believed I had a voice. I wrote a lot of poetry, so I felt like I was able to sort of stitch together phrases in an interesting way, but I didn't have any idea how I was ever going to pull this off. And I think it was just trial and error and copious amounts of bullshit that got me across the line.
You got to work with Nile also later on.
I did.
In your career, a full circle moment.
That was one of the coolest moments, or especially in a time when I really needed it. I connected with Nile when I was 29, and we wrote a song for Chic together, and we wrote a pitch song for Donna Summer, which was the craziest thing I've ever done, and actually was a tremendous learning curve, because the intimidation of writing for Donna with Nile was like a boulder on my shoulder. And what's funny about it was Nile said to me that day, he said, when you are writing for artists who've had measured success, never chase what they've just done, but write a completely outlandish sequel. Think outside the box. And I took that wiring with me for the rest of my career, and I think it was really helpful for me. I never tried to rewrite their past victories. I tried to chase a new path with every artist I worked with.
To get your start in the industry, you've said fake it till you make it, but you also didn't wait for a door to open for you. You kind of found your own. You developed bands.
Yeah, I've always said I'm akin to something that crawls up your shower curtain, some weird bug. Try to wash it down and it just doesn't really go down the drain. I have like an unbridled tenacity, and it's sometimes a little delusional, but I figured I would do anything I could to stay in this business because I wasn't qualified to do anything else in the world. So I remixed records, I did drum programming, I put together groups. I used to take out ads in the Village Voice, and I would cast groups under ideas that I'd been chasing, just sort of directionally, and then make records and pray that someone would sign them, and I just took a lot of crazy shots.
And you built groups like Boys Like Girls, Cobra Starship. What did it take to build from scratch, and how it's more than just songwriting for them? You also did the development.
Well, I was very blessed because the kids especially in the second incarnation of groups that I put together, you had these incredible star-like characters fronting each of them, which made life so much easier. Gabe Saporto's magnetic, Martin Johnson, incredibly gifted, Travis Clark, incredibly gifted. So these kids, like, I was very lucky because I worked with extremely talented kids who also were great writers themselves. So it was a lot easier. It was earlier in my career was harder because I was occasionally I take on acts that didn't have a ton of experience musically, but I tried to shapeshift them into my ideas. And this was a lot easier to work with kids who were super talented, who we all sort of saw the same lane and we chased it together.
Let's talk about how you built them and cast them, just to dive in a bit more. So Martin, for example, was a kid that you met. He was from Andover, Massachusetts.
Martin Johnson was a 19-year-old kid from Andover, Massachusetts.
He answers your ad?
No, he came via Mike Caputo, who was a manager in Boston. He's a very talented talent scout, and he brought him down. And Martin, it's funny, Martin put together Boys Like Girls himself. Just with local characters. He was going to go solo. He was going for a solo singer-songwriter thing, and we convinced him to actually give a band idea one more shot because he had lost interest in bands. And he grabbed Johnny Keefe, who had been in a band with, Paul DiGiovanni, who's now a massive country producer, who back then was a 16-year-old sophomore in high school, and Brian, the bass player. And it was crazy. They auditioned for me in a warehouse, a dilapidated warehouse in Andover, and my wife was 8 months pregnant, and we were coming from a baby shower, and we drove across the state of Massachusetts to audition them, and which also tells you how desperate I was for this thing to work. So also tells you that I'm a terrible husband.
What advice do you have for songwriters, who don't have this track record and are trying to make it?
I think one thing that I'm very proud of in my career is intellectual curiosity. I never really chased the center. I always tried to color outside the lines. And that's song-based, but also genre-based. So I get excited when I get a challenge that doesn't necessarily speak to my wiring. And, this summer is a great composite of my career. I have a Public Enemy single. I wrote the end title to the Dora the Explorer movie. I did the single for a band called Bill Murray, which is hardcore, emo, country something. And there was something else equally ludicrous. And that's how I view music. It's like I'm not genre specific. I'm up for any challenge, but I'm a scientist. When I get under the hood of these things because I'm such a fan and I come from such a incredible sort of place of fandom. So when I made the OJ's Farewell record 7 years ago, I sat with the history of Philly soul in my headphones for weeks on end, just trying to, understand what the brilliance of Gamble and Huff were and how did they make those records and how were they written and how are they, constructed. And that's how I've always approached music I love a challenge. It doesn't matter what the genre is or what the lane is. I think I think with young songwriters, sometimes you're sort of, you spend a lot of time chasing your peers and you can be conservative in your wiring in that way in which you don't really take those shots that are sort of very left of center. And I think the left of center shots have always been the ones for me that put a stamp on my career.
Mm-hmm. You worked with so many different artists across genres, from One Direction to Panic at the Disco to Ringo Starr, different age groups. How do you approach a session with these different artists and adapt your voices to be able to bring out the music?
I think internally I view my writing through the lens of a screenwriter. So I'm writing scripts and the genres change, the artists change, but it's a movie and I'm trying to figure out what the movie is, what the sequel is to what they've done. And I think I harp on it a lot, but I mean it. I'm a colossal fan. I'm a nerd. I'm somebody who grew up as a record collector. I came into this business very differently from a lot of people. I was just the colossal fan who someone let sneak in the room. So because I've had that entryway, every record for me is a puzzle. So it doesn't matter if it's One Direction or Ringo or Carole King or whoever. I'm gonna approach it with the utmost respect for their artistry and do anything I can to just enhance it and just maybe bring my voice to it.
What goes into that due diligence that you do, looking into, their past while you're developing the screenplay for them?
I work, my due diligence is crazy. And I think it's born out of the fact that I'm so scared that I'll become irrelevant. And the fact that I wake up on many mornings and I'm competing against 19-year-old kids who are incredibly verbal and gifted and have all these skill sets already. So the one attribute that I'd like to take tremendous pride in is the work ethic. And the work ethic for me is the deep dive. So 3 or 4 days before any session, I'm in headphones, listening to any YouTube interview, any podcast, reading print, and I'm just trying to gain access into an artist's wiring, maybe humor, directional shifts, just anything I can find out that might give me a leg up when I go into a room. I've always said this and I really believe it. I want to make sure they know infinitely less about me than I know about them. Like if I've come in a room and they know more about me, then I didn't do my job. And that's worked out really well for me. And I think a lot of young artists don't do it. It's funny because I'll write sometimes with younger writers and they're on a treadmill of sessions and they don't realize how important it is for every session to come in so prepared, come in with ideas, come in with voice notes, come in with finished songs. Because you never know the way the directional pull of the session's going to go, and you want to be prepped for every scenario.
So let's talk about that, because there's sometimes, you're in the session with just the artist, and then there's sometimes you're in the session with other writers. How does that collaboration work when there are multiple writers in the room?
It's harder. I love collaboration. I feel like I'm a professional plus one. And that's what I was put here to do. No one ever needs to see me at the front of a stage, but, behind the curtain, I look kind of sexy. And when I'm in a room full of other writers, it's all about the matched skill sets and how we define each other and how we play off of each other. And sometimes you can step on people's toes and it's just a disaster. But in a great scenario, if I'm lyrical and melodic and I'm working with somebody who's more track-based or somebody who's like infinitely more melodic than me, the song can really work. I mean, when I worked with One Direction, it was me and Kojak, who is a producer, and Peter Svensson, who was a melodic writer and a guitarist. And it was a great fit because, Peter's melodies were so Swedish and beyond mine. And Kojak did his thing rhythmically, and then that left the entire lane for me lyrically to just do what I do. And I think that's the most important thing. I think in collaboration, you got to just make sure that everybody has a defined path. I never want to leave a session sitting in the back of the room not contributing, because I wouldn't want to hear that song again. I don't want a free ride. I want to do the work. So I want to hear my voice in it.
Talking about defined lanes and transparency, especially during a session where you're all contributing, going towards publishing, what advice do you have for younger artists or younger songwriters who are trying to navigate splits within sessions?
I mean, to me, it's a very simple game. Everyone in the room should be rewarded equally. It's when artists and writers are petty about these things, it almost casts a pall over it. And I feel like it just instantly it tarnishes the experience. It's a shared experience. If we're all in the room, we're writing equally. It's as simple as that. So.
Outside of being a songwriter, you're also a very accomplished producer. You produced all of Gym Class's Heroes' first album.
Yep.
How did you get into producing? Did that come later on in your journey?
I always produced. I never intended to be a producer. I really wanted to be a writer. But as I climbed the proverbial ladder in the city in New York, what I realized was that demos, it was so imperative to have a competitive demo because you were writing against other writers who were very talented and they were putting the work into their demos too. And demos should sound like masters. They should sound ready to go. And what happened to me is I just started doing demos that became masters for people where eventually they said, let's not re-record this, let's use this. Mm. And suddenly I was a producer. But even though I still produce, I'm a writer first. I think production many times is born out of either engineer producers or writer producers. I'm a writer producer. So what that really means is that song is king for me on everything. So the production is the dressing and I love it and it's great. But truthfully, if the song is right, that's all that matters to me.
You've had a hand in creating some of the greatest anthems, a lot of anthems.
This is like the most flattering interview ever. God, I love Sound Exchange.
I geeked out when I saw your Spotify playlist and I went through all the songs. I was like, are we okay? Yeah. Check Yes, Juliet, yes. Great Escape, yeah. Shake It, yeah. Cupid's Chokehold, yeah. Till I Forget About You. Yeah. In your opinion, what makes a song an anthem?
Well, there are two things that define my writing most of the time. One is tempo. It's funny for my kid, I had to make a Spotify playlist. I was introducing her when she was very young to 80s music. And I suddenly realized that everything I put on the playlist was between 120 and 200 beats per minute. So I listen to music fast. I think it's a very punk rock ethos, but I still I hear tempo. It started with being a kid who grew up on disco and then punk rock and indie rock and all this stuff. So I liked that tempo breeds anthem to me. Also, I like choruses that explode. And I think that's just being part of the MTV generation, and coming up with bands, and just everything around me sort of had these ginormous steroided choruses as a kid. Everything from the Def Leppard, Bon Jovi side of rock to, the REM and, Hoodoo Grooves and Husker Du and all these bands that I dug. So I just think those two ingredients, you marry tempo with big bombastic hooks and it feels anthemic to me. I talk about Check Yes, Juliet's a fun one just because Check Yes, Juliet we made the We the Kings debut record without a label. We recorded it and we just cut this 6 blocks down the street, and it was an unsigned band that we fell in love with from Bradenton. They changed their name. They changed sort of genres a little bit, and they were punk rock kids, but they went a little more pop with us. And we had this one melody. We had finished a record, but this one melody didn't have a lyric, and this completely coincided with the moment where we're trying to name the band. And Hunter, the guitarist, wanted to name the band Check Yes, Juliet. And I screamed at him on the phone one day and told him it was the worst name for a band I'd ever heard. And a week later, I was walking to get a coffee at Astor Place, and I had that melody that had just been sitting in my head. And I was standing in front of the mud truck, which was the coffee kiosk there. And as I stood there and it's pouring, I sang, Check Yes, Juliet, are you with me? Rain is falling down on the sidewalk right in front of me. And I ran back, spilling my coffee to the studio. And I said, you were right about Check Yes, Juliet. It's not your band, it's our song. And we finished it in 20 minutes. And it might be my favorite song we ever did in some strange way, just because it was just such a weird moment of happenstance how it came together. And I love those guys too, so.
Not 20 minutes is crazy. That's very quick. Is that normal?
Yeah, I'm pretty fast. I tend to, I think my first melody, I learned the great Allie Willis, who was one of the, my favorite songwriters of all time, who passed away in 2020, I believe, or 2019. And she wrote September for Earth, Wind and Fire, Boogie Wonderland. She wrote the Friends theme. She was the greatest. And Allie Willis, when I wrote with her one night, told me that her first melody that she hears when there's a musical bed and she starts singing, the first melody she sings is always her best melody. And I had always blamed myself because I felt the same thing, but I always thought that was being lazy. So I beat myself up and then try 400 options, but always come back to the first melody. And she was the first person that gave me the rubber stamp to say it's okay to own that first melody. And it's truly my best stuff. So if I'm hearing it, the second there's a musical bed and I just start singing something, if it works, it's going to be a really fast song because I can sort of piece it together lyrically quickly. So
That's really good advice.
I'm trying.
For you, what is one of the most important lessons you've learned, but on the business side?
Most important lessons I've learned on the business side of music is to embrace sound exchange for everything it's worth, because it is the one check that I don't have to chase down. It actually just arrives. And in a business of very strange math, it is lovely to have.
You sold your catalog in 2019.
Yeah.
What led you to that decision?
I just wanted freedom. And I had spent so many years working 6 days a week and taking sometimes projects that I didn't want to take on, but I wanted fiscally, I knew I had to just keep taking shots. And I wanted to have the luxury for the rest of my career to sit back and actually work on things that spoke to me. And it afforded me that ability, and it's incredible.
Before topping charts, you've talked in your book and interviews a lot about false starts, false hopes. You said Guinness World Records of flops. Can you bring us to a story of one of those setbacks and how you overcame it?
I spent the first 14 years of my career under a black cloud. There were always very, very small victories that kept me in this, but on a colossal level, everything I touched failed, and I was usually responsible for the failing to some extent. I didn't, I got better as I went. My instincts got better, but, I developed a rap group called Bad Ronald. Warner Brothers Records signed them to a really big deal. We made the album. I was really proud of it, and came out. On the night before it came out, we went to 4 blocks south of here to the old Virgin Megastore, which was in Union Square, and our album cover was the displayed cover on Broadway. It was massive. It was like this vast cover. It was an American flag motorcycle helmet from the movie Easy Rider. And the video was in full rotation on MTV, and it was my first song ever on MTV. And it was the first moment I felt like I'd actually permeated this business. And the night of the release, I think it used to be Monday night releases, so Virgin would stay open till midnight. So we ran there with the group, and we took photos outside in front of the store holding the album cover. And it was my first album really coming out. And that was midnight, September 11th, 2001. And 7 or 8 hours later, I was standing there watching the towers fall as people ran north, completely covered in soot. And they were looking for family members in Union Square, and all the media were there as well, filming this. And they were filming just people in absolute despair in front of our American flag album cover. And that was the end of Bad Ronald. They lost their record deal about 4 weeks later. And it was a rap record that I don't think America wanted at that time. So that was the one that hurt the most, because it was a really cool group, and it was a really cool record, and just that's how it works.
That feels more like an unfortunate timing situation more than something that you touched that didn't work out.
No, but everything is unfortunate timing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's you can touch things, and sometimes the sleight of a hand. Sometimes it's just a subtlety that can push it the wrong way. There were just so many records. There's so many artists, and that's why I wrote the book, is like, I wanted to exhume the memories of Jay Bender, the Cooler Kids, Tarsha Vega, Logan Seven, Bad Ronald. These were all records that were so important to me. And I just felt just sometimes life took crazy turns, and, you know, they didn't get the looks that I hoped they would. Another
theme of patience I feel like you exercise is also, you know, songs that maybe don't hit right away.
Mm-hmm.
You had a song, Someone to You, that when you released it had 1 million streams, and today has nearly 1 billion streams.
It'll be 1 billion in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was one that you believed in from the beginning, and just didn't get the support that you needed.
I take tremendous pride in Banner's Someone to You, because there are many composites to that story that make it really interesting. You had an artist who was going to cancel the session. He didn't want to work. He was so burnt out. He had done 30 days straight writing in LA and hadn't really anything to show for it, and was going to turn around. And he had 2 voices, his A&R person, Steve Yaguel, and his good friend Rhiannon Ellis, and both of them were pushing him, saying, just do the session, give him 1 shot, give Sam 1 shot, which I thought was super cool. I prepped for the session. I had an idea when he showed up. I knew exactly what I thought the concept and what I thought the lyric, bed should be conceptually. Talented artist, beautiful singer, and he's a really cool lyricist. So having somebody to collaborate with who brought a lot to the table as well. Grant Michaels is the other co-writer on that, and I thought he had a really cool acoustic part that sort of drove it. And so it was a great collaboration, but we finished the song. I thought to myself, this song is a monster. I thought, this is like the best thing I've written this year. And I just don't know if anybody really understood it, because his previous work was darker and a little bit more alternative. And I just felt like it was an absolute no-brainer that it was going to be the song that defined him. And sometimes I felt like I was a one-man army. And I was just, what was interesting about that song, and I learned a valuable lesson, is sometimes the songs, they're indicators that they're just constant lifelines that keep it afloat. And that tells you that maybe something special is going on. It's like the song came out, it got no playlisting, nothing. It was jammed on an EP, and it wasn't even like a focus track. Then it got an American Idol sync, and it was the de facto theme for a season of American Idol. Little spike in the streams. Michael Banners performed it on the show, little spike in the streams. Then it got a Netflix trailer, massive spike in the streams. Then TikTok came along, massive spike, and as it hits 1 billion in a few weeks, I really do think it was one of these songs that people really, that resonated with people. But it was also, I feel like emotionally I willed it. I want to take all the credit. No one else deserves any credit. It's just me. I feel like my mental, telepathy pushed that across the top.
How crazy is it that all of those platforms, like something as large sync as American Idol, and it was a TikTok video that did that?
It was totally TikTok. It was the Netflix trailer really helped. It pushed it out of the mire that it was sitting in, but still it was TikTok. And for me, that was the first time I'd experienced the benefits of TikTok, because having something, this was 2021 or 2020, and watching something relatively go viral, I had never seen. And it was fascinating because I just did, I didn't see it coming.
What is the most unexpected twist in a song's journey that you've had? Was it that, or has there been any others? It was probably
Banners was the biggest twist. I'm trying to think of another one that raised its hand like that. I wrote a song called Marry Me with Train, and I'd like to take tons of credit for it, but I did absolutely nothing. We wrote a song, me and Pat Monahan and Dave Katz wrote a song called Stay On Me. And I fought for that lyric with Pat. And I remember Pat saying to me, what does stay on me mean? I said, hey man, just trust me. I know, it's great. It sings great. And he didn't trust me. So he went home after the session and changed the song to Marry Me from Stay On Me. And it was a big hit. And I get paid from it. And all I did was derail the train. So sometimes you get rewarded for the stupidity, but that one, I'm very thank you, pat on the head.
You've known since the 8th grade that you wanted to be a producer and songwriter.
Yeah.
The industry, I feel like, glorifies a lot of overnight success while you're young.
Yeah.
It didn't really hit for you until you said 35.
Are we questioning my age right now? I feel like these genetics are pretty strong.
They are.
Like, a little doughy, but like composed.
Basically today. It didn't hit till today.
Yes, okay.
You even had a moment you talked about when you were 30 that you had this iconic collaboration with Carole King, but 35 was still 5 years later when you attribute your kind of breakthrough moment. Can you talk about what her validation meant for you at 30 and how you kept the faith for those 5 years?
The Carole King collaboration kept me in the business mentally because she was one of my favorite writers. And to me, she was the poster child of class musically and also just as a human being. The way she approached life with the dignity that she approaches it. Getting to work under her tutelage was everything for me because although I couldn't write with bands my own age, I couldn't get any sessions with, artists of the era that I really wanted to collaborate with, I was learning from the best. And even more so, the best was actually telling other people that I was pretty good. And that was enough. I mean, my mom thought it was super cool. That was big, because my mom, up to that point, I think she hated my music. So it was like this moment of validation that I needed. But what it did for me was it was the moment where I really believed that I might actually be okay at this. I might actually be good. And maybe I'm not just completely willing this without the skill set, but maybe I have the ability to do this. And I needed that because the next couple of years were still just as traumatic, more records getting shelved, more just opportunities that just almost happened, didn't happen. But to know that at least Carole King thought I was moderately talented was pretty cool,
And people start in this industry so young, so waiting that many years for something to happen, all these almost things being taken from you, it's really hard and energy draining. What advice do you have for young artists who feel like they're struggling with running out of time before they've started?
Well, one thing I like to say is I think I've been a really solid generational conduit. I wake up in the morning and I'm as excited to write with a 90-year-old as I'm excited to write with an 18-year-old. And I'm wise enough in this many years of doing it to understand that both work and you will learn from both. And knowledge is power. It's like, that's what sets people apart. So if you're struggling and you feel like you're on the clock, go write with somebody who's 30 years older than you and learn the tricks. Write with somebody who's 10 years younger than you and learn the tricks. Just keep learning. Don't worry, there is no clock. If I'm proof positive that there's absolutely no clock. Phil Galdston wrote Save the Best for Last. I believe he was 40. There's no timeline. I don't believe in any of that. I just think the most important thing is constantly learning and evolving and just not chasing. Don't ever chase. That's where people fail. It's like, don't chase. When you're chasing something that's working, you're already many months too late. And it's imperative. Color outside the lines,
Last question for you. If you could go back and talk to your 8th grade self who just got in front of the class and announced that this is what I'm going to be, what would you tell him now?
Well, if I could go back and talk to my 8th grade self, I would say the hair loss is going to be intense. It's going to freak you out. But the rest of it's going to be okay. Just outwork everybody. And be very grateful for Sound Exchange.